Please welcome Sean Mooney.
Hello, everybody. Please pare down the enthusiasm there. So my name is Sean. I'm a UCD student, PhD student doing astrophysics. Yeah, wait. So the first caveat is for those of you who are here to study for your Leaving Cert physics exam next year, a lot of what I'm going to say is going to be correct, but in a much more accurate way, it's not going to be correct at all. So don't go anywhere with this information. Now, I said I was a student, and I was really deliberating of what to call myself. So PhD students tend to flow between student, researcher, academic, astronomer, but it's very context dependent, and I think that's the only way to do it. Going to the cinema, of course, student, and it's a real Irish thing, but every Irish person will use their student card when they're like 45 going to the cinema to save €2. But I was at a wedding a few weeks ago, sitting next to a couple who were younger than me, you know, just did their undergrad, got a job in finance, they're saving for a mortgage. I know, those people, right? But I'm pushing on 30 now. I live at home with my parents. I don't have a car. I'm in debt. So all I had going for me then was like the researcher thing. So I went to the bathroom during the thing and I came back to the dinner table with my lab coat on. We don't even wear lab coats. But I thought, this is it, fuck it. Some test tubes and just went with it. But, you know, often I'm asked, like, where did I get interested in physics? Like, why that? And often if you get a child a telescope, it can be quite an inspiring thing, you know. And a lot of famous astronomers have these stories of when they were kids and they first saw the night sky and they said, oh yes, and I wanted to be an astronomer. So it was Christmas 2001. And I got a pair of football boots. And within about 2 weeks, I realized that I'm never going to play anything that involves coordination. But it gets dark quite early those nights. So on my way home, it was only about 4 o'clock, and I was walking home on my own in the dark, and I got abducted by 2 aliens, right? And they dropped me home like 3 days later. We had a great time. And I haven't been able to find them since. So they weren't on Bebo. So my love of astronomy is just from trying to find them, get the lads back together, the gang, and hang out. So it's more of a friendship kind of thing. People are often put off, though, by the technical jargon. You have your quantum chromodynamic this and all this kind of thing. A lot of math, very spooky math. People are afraid of it. But I failed, if it makes you feel better, right? I failed maths and physics for my Leaving Cert. Now again, if that makes you feel better, but it's not true. But you're happy to just, whatever makes you feel better, right? But admittedly, right, there are a lot of acronyms. There's a lot of jargon with all these kind of subjects. So some of the biggest telescopes in the world, they're all acronyms, right? You have the VLT, which stands for Very Large Telescope. That's the real name of it. There's a telescope in America called VLA, which is Very Large Array, which is an array of telescopes. The European Southern Observatory are building a new telescope. It's going to be the biggest in the world. It's called the ELT, Extremely Large Telescope. Again, absolute real names. I just fear we're going to run out of adjectives. But there was a telescope that was cancelled called OWL, O-W-L, and a lot of planning went into it. There's full Wikipedia pages about it. And OWL does stand for Overwhelmingly Large Telescope. And it actually didn't get built. So, I mean, talking about, like, digging your own grave there. Oh, yeah. What do I actually do after all that, right? So the telescope I use is called LOFAR. LOFAR kind of sounds a bit like a shoe, LOFAR, and a bit of it is in Offaly. Now, that's all we have time for on that front. I still have to, I'm just looking at my watch here, I still have to talk about strippers and children, and I only have like 5 minutes left, so we'll just move on. So I use LOFAR to look at a supermassive black hole really far away, right? And you have a black hole, and there's a magnetic field around it, just like there is at Earth. And the electrons are getting pulled into the black hole. And as they do so, they gyrate around the magnetic field, and they give off light, give off radio waves. And we pick these up in our telescopes, punch them in the computer, and do some math or whatever. When I was trying to write this down earlier, I was wondering, is gyrate a scientific term? Is it jargon, or is it a normal term? Because if you spend too long in a field, you kind of get detached, right? So I Googled it. So I just type it in. The definition comes up. The top definition, bang, exactly what I want. Gyrate, to move in a spiral. And that's what I mean. So the electrons are spiraling in the magnetic field. There was a second definition, though, which says to dance in a wild or suggestive manner. And this is not what I mean, okay? And it gives an example, so you can use it in a sentence. And the sentence they give is, the strippers gyrated to rock music on a low stage. So if you just type this in, again, this is all on the internet, right? But, okay, so I presume there's no strippers in the audience, right? So this is a low stage. We'll just imagine there's music playing, okay? Let's say I'm a stripper. I'm not going to take off my clothes, don't worry. So as I gyrate, if you just imagine that my hips are an electron, right? The rock music would be the magnetic field, and if this low stage was a black hole, you're kind of halfway to a PhD, right? And it's for this reason that I kind of spend half my time in UCD and half my time in strip clubs. It's kind of a trade-off. But of all of this, right, the black hole, it's massive. It's like 2,000 million kilos. It's, hundreds of thousands of light years long. It's billions of light years away. So even though it's really big, on the sky it appears tiny. It appears about 10,000 times smaller than your thumbnail at arm's distance, right? So it's really small. And the hard thing of talking to adults about astronomy is this freaks them the fuck out, right? They're like, oh my God, we're so small in the world. Why do I bother? Why should I bother do anything? Why have a shower? Why feed my cat or whatever? And I'm like, don't feed your cat. Don't have a shower. Let's just get on with it, right? Kids are way more receptive to it. They just think it's the coolest thing ever. So for that reason, I do a lot of outreach, which involves going to primary schools generally, talking to classes of kids about space, and they get really excited about it. And I need this because middle PhD life, you kind of hate your subject. So I go and like a vampire, I leech off their enthusiasm, and that gives me life. Now, I have my hands tied in one respect, and that's that a lot of schools are Catholic schools, which kind of restricts what you can say. So you can't really talk about a lot of metaphysical stuff. And like I'm often asked, where's heaven? Because kids have an idea that it's up, and I've just said, well, up is black, cold, empty space, right? But the answer I have to give is, ask your parents or that, along that kind of thing. That's, again, absolutely true, right? So one kid asked a question. I was talking in a girls' school in Dublin about 2 weeks ago for Science Week, and I was talking about the sun, and they put up their hand, and it wasn't even a question. They just said, my mom says Jesus lives on the sun. So I gave it the which I have perfected as being like yes or no interpretable, depending on what they want to hear. So you can just give it like, and just move on with my sidestep that. So I finished my talk, and then at the end, another kid asked, "Have any animals ever been to space?" And this is great, right? Absolute great. Kids love animals, they love space. So I just launched into a tirade about Leica, right? So this dog that Russians sent up, one of the first animals in space. And I'm just, bumbling through information. Then I was kind of, in the back of my mind, just starting to realize, no, this is going not good. The dog doesn't have a good end here. And I showed them pictures of the dog, very cute. It's only 3, little street dog. So then I, just kind of stopped talking, moved on to something else. But kids always ask why. Why, what's the next thing? And sure enough, some child asked, where is the dog now? So, first of all, it was 1957, right? 99% of mammals that were alive in 1957 are dead, right? But I didn't know what to do, right? So, do I talk about the animal rights issues in the Soviet Union in the 70s, the space race? Do I, the need to develop nuclear weapons? Or I didn't really know what to do. So I papered over that as well, and I just got out of there because it was 9 o'clock in the morning. I've probably been talking for a few minutes. I was invited in to talk about space, and then here I was about to tell 25 kids that their new favorite friend is dead. But I do feel bad now because when those kids go home, like their parents would have said, what did you learn today? And they would have said, we had an astronomer in, well, not a student. You're going to a school, you can't say you're a student as well. But they had an astronomer in who was there, and they told us that Jesus lives on the sun. And he has a pet dog from Russia. So, thank you, that's all.